Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I just lost you on the iPad. There you go. That's good. That's good.
How's the sound?
Yep, that's perfect. All right, here we go. So you're going to want to take your mic off on the Twitter space, and I'm going to introduce you right now. Okay, I want to welcome everybody to another Thursday Coaches Corner, 9 p.m. Eastern Time. Each and every Thursday, we will be talking with not only college coaches, we're going to be talking with major league and minor league players and coaches, travel ball organizations, as well as high school coaches from across the country. My guest this evening is somebody I've known for a few years, actually coached my youngest son, Tyler, in 2014 with the USA Olympic summer team. Jim Schlossnagle has been around the game of college baseball, played at Elon for what I consider to be one of the best college coaches of all time, and Rick Jones at Elon, and then followed him to be side by side as an associate head coach at Tulane, and then ultimately over to TCU, and now as an Aggie at Texas A&M. Gig 'em. Welcome, Jim.
Welcome. Thanks for having me. Appreciate me, being on with you, and love what you do.
Well, I appreciate you taking the time to join me, and we're going to talk a little bit about tonight because I don't think people really have a true understanding, and this is not smoke, this is fact. When you took over the Texas A&M program, would it be safe to say that it was the cupboard was kind of bare when you took it over?
Well, I think what had happened is they let the previous coach's contract just run out, which is never a good scenario for anybody, because everybody, whether it be in recruiting or whether it be the current team, they really don't, they don't know what's coming, and so that was a tough scenario. The 2021 A&M team didn't make the SEC tournament, and a lot of the better players were older and either graduated, transferred, or signed professionally. But we did inherit some very talented players that had just, because of the culture, the way things had fallen in the last year and a half, had kind of underperformed a little bit. And that's not anybody's fault. That's not a statement negatively to the previous coaching staff. I think anytime you just let the coach's contract run out, it's kind of like anything in professional sports, like, that's not going to be a good thing. So anyway, we inherited a limited roster, and then the transfer portal allowed us to plug in some good pieces, and kind of came together about a third of the way into the season, and had a storybook run in the College World Series.
Well, to me, watching that team develop, I believe it's a true testament to the coaching staff. Kind of a rocky start, but then as the middle of the season into the SEC tournament, obviously regional, super regionals, that team was firing on all cylinders. In your opinion, what does it take? We hear this word team and we, but what does it take to really establish that culture within a program? And you were able to do it so quickly and kind of assimilate everybody and going and rowing the boat in one direction.
Yeah, I mean, I think a leader's job is, two things. One, recruit and develop talent. Two is to develop a culture and a standard, and maintain and continue to grow that over the course of time. And so the first thing is you got to get everybody on the same page as to the direction you're headed and what you're about, what you stand for. And that's everybody from the players to the head coach to the assistant coaches to the strength coach. The strength coach in college baseball, as you know, plays a huge role in that because the players spend so much time with him, and ours, Jeremy McMillan, and I are very much aligned in how we like to do things. And so, and those things don't happen in one meeting. That you don't print off a T-shirt or put something on a wall and think all of a sudden you have a culture. It's the day to day. This is the standard, and you get held accountable to the standard. And we believe in what's called the compound effect, and you put those days on top of days, and the days aren't always perfect, but you create a standard. And then during the season, and all this stuff sounds really coachy, but it's really true, is you play to a standard and not a scoreboard, right? And if you play to a standard, you can definitely play well and lose, especially in the SEC. But if you play to a standard and don't pay attention to what's going on the scoreboard, and you're just trying to win pitches, most of the time you can look up and and the end result will be there. And so we had started the season 10-6, getting ready to go to LSU for my first SEC weekend as an SEC head coach. And I wasn't sure we were going to win 10 games in the league. And we just so happened to win that series against LSU. We actually lost the next 2 series against Alabama and Auburn, but we won the next 7. And guys were it was what I call it. We were the most imperfect. I lost you for a second.
Yeah, I lost you for a second. But I remember the LSU series. I remember watching it on the SEC network up here in Boston. And just thinking to myself, as that series evolved, and then watching your team kind of gel at the end of last season, and obviously into Omaha, which is tremendous accomplishment, especially within the SEC as a first-year head coach in the conference. I have a few questions. I just want to integrate them in because they've been coming in all week. Obviously, we have a lot of Aggie fans, 12th man, Gig'em fans from all over the country, actually. A lot of parents want to know, in your opinion, what's the role, or has the role of the high school recruit diminished slightly within your recruiting classes? And I think what they're trying to ask is, are you kind of holding roster spots now as a college head coach for the potential of a transfer, whether that's JUCO or lateral transfer, as opposed to filling up on the high school recruits?
Yeah, that's a real popular question these days, and it's a valid question. And it's a tough one to answer because ideally you want to build and maintain your baseball program with the very best high school players, right? And you want to supplement your program. People don't understand because they're not as old as you or I. With the exception of about the last 7 or 8 years, transferring has always been a part of college baseball.
Always.
Most of my assistant coach time, and even as a head coach all the way up, even into my years at TCU, players were allowed to transfer and that's not a bad thing necessarily, especially when you're talking about limited scholarships and the fact that you don't have to be 6'4" and 220 pounds to be a major league player. A lot of guys, if they did earn enough playing time, they might be able to find their way into professional baseball. But what the transfer portal has done is just made it more public, right? It's just literally, It's literally a waiver wire. So transferring is not new. Ideally, you want to get your program to the point where you're developing the high school player, and you have the very best high school players coming to your campus, and you supplement the program with the transfer. In other words, hey, we just lost a shortstop in the draft. We really can't afford to go into this year with a freshman shortstop in the SEC. Let's go ahead and grab that guy, right? And taking a grad transfer is different than taking, the sophomore transfer or the freshman transfer. The freshman or sophomore is going to be in your program for a couple of years, whereas the grad transfer, like we had last year, Troy Claunch, our catcher from Oregon State, Cole Kaler, our shortstop from Hawaii, Dylan Rock, our 3-hole hitter from UTSA, Jacob Palish, a left-handed pitcher from Stanford. All those guys were kind of one and done type players. And I think what you're seeing is, and especially in today's college athletics, when a new coach comes in, you're not just one recruiting class behind, you're 2 and 3 recruiting classes behind. So you're trying to bridge the gap between where you are to where you want to be. And the transfer portal is going to be a part of that. What does that mean for the high school player? Well, I can tell you this, not one great player has ever worried about who's going to be at that ballpark. No good player has ever said, well, who else is going to be the shortstop? The best players just say, sign who you want. I'm going to beat them, right? And I also like to compare it to, when your son Tyler Beede was drafted in the first round or whatever he was drafted out of Vanderbilt. Who drafted the Giants? Who drafted Tyler?
Giants. Yeah, Giants
Yeah,
out of Vanderbilt.
yeah. So the Giants drafted Tyler. I'm pretty sure Tyler didn't go to the Giants administration, and probably Sabian was the GM at the time or something.
Stapes, yeah.
And say, hey, are you guys going to draft any more pitchers next year? So I'm not trying to be hardcore at all, but just trying to be. This is the truth. Every high school player, every junior college player, every current player in a four-year school, every transfer. Here's what you need to know. You're in a tryout the rest of your life.
Every day.
And every day. And that's not just as a baseball player, that's in whatever job you choose. So there's nothing that's going to prepare you more for this than that. And so I ought to be frank with you, when a guy brings that up, I try to give him the benefit of the doubt with the question, because it's just the culture today to ask that question. But it creates a little bit of doubt, because no good player has ever worried about that, right? And so it's going to be competitive. And I don't care if you're going to go to Vanderbilt, Texas A&M, TCU, Elon, great Division III program. There's going to be good players there, and you're going to have to go earn your keep. And I've never met a coach ever at any level that doesn't put the lineup on the field on that particular day that gives him the best chance to win, whether you're a freshman, whether you're a fifth-year guy or not. So are there more? There's certainly more people to choose from, I guess you could say, but that doesn't mean that you can't be a great high school player and go win a job.
See, I agree completely 100%. I mean, as a former college coach, that's how my boys were raised. So in today's world, when I'm discussing this topic with parents, and Travis Jewett kind of alluded to it last week, hey, listen, for the rest of your life, once you step on a high school varsity field, you're trying out every day. Because if you're not doing your job, if you're not being that teammate and understanding and excelling in your role, a coach's responsibility to the team is to put the best 9 players each and every day, each and every inning, each and every season. So I'm glad to hear the candor, and so that parents
And I
can
think,
kind of hear that.
yeah, and I think one more point too is, everybody hears about the Alex Bregman who comes in, or Dylan Cruz at LSU, has a great freshman year, but no one ever talks about the 95 other percent of guys. Here's what everybody needs to know. The biggest jump that a player is ever going to have in his career is from high school baseball, especially to elite Division I baseball. That jump is massive. The jump from college baseball to the minor leagues is not nearly as big, both personally and professionally. You have to deal with playing more games, you have to deal with more travel, but in terms of the talent level, that's not nearly as big a jump. And so it's okay. I mean, if we were to go, I think I had our analytics people last year go through like the average position player in the SEC. How many at bats did they get? What was their batting average? And over the course of the last 5 years, the average number of at bats is in like the 50s, and the average batting average is like 220. And those are some. And if I told you the names of those guys, these are guys that become elite major league players. So just sit tight, trust, keep working, and control the things you can control. You can't control the decisions the coaches make. The only way you can is by how hard you work and how you produce. And so no good coach is ever going to get rid of a good player who works hard. So just control those things and it'll take care of itself.
So on that note, does Texas A&M utilize camps more? Does college baseball utilize the individual camps more today than maybe 5 years ago, when the showcase and the tournament circuit was really, I think, at its peak? But do you use your camps now as a good evaluating platform for potential incoming recruits?
Yeah, we do. We really do. And I think, you can call them what you want, but they're basically, the term in the NCAA they try to avoid is a pop-up camp. But that's basically what a lot of the major programs are doing now is it's a way to get players to your campus, not just to evaluate them. That is certainly a part of it, but but or not just to evaluate them on a baseball field, but get to know them,
Right.
you know, and for them to get to know you and to see if it's a fit, right? A lot of times we've already made a decision on whether the guy's a good player or not. We just want to know what kind of guy he is and see him go through a practice and see him, you know, as long as everybody does it, you know, they get to see the campus and do different things that way. And so, you know, it's just a way within the NCAA rules to allow a player to come to your campus, and it's a two-way evaluation. He's kind of evaluating, hey, what's this place all about? Is this a place that's of interest to me? And then we're evaluating not just what kind of player he is, but how coachable is he? What, you know, how's he act around his teammates? How hard does he play? What are his parents like? How does he interact with, you know, with everybody else? So there's no question the showcases now are more to identify, okay, wow, that guy has, you know, because you only maybe get to see him a little bit, and then you're on to the next field. All right, let's try to get that guy to camp, and then we can interact and really find out what kind of human being we're dealing with.
So now on that topic, you know, you see a lot of freshmen over the last 10, 15 years going back to Tulane, you know, so you're dealing with big major metropolitan cities or big cities, you know, and with TCU and Tulane and now obviously Texas A&M in these big conferences. What do you think the biggest, I don't want to call it weakness, but what's missing more today than maybe 5 or 10 years ago with the current freshman classes that come in? Do you find that they're weaker with regard to physical development, meaning strength, or maybe the unique being able to be part of a team because they're kind of been individual based from team to team? What do you think the biggest area of weakness or neglect has been with the recent freshman classes, maybe?
Yeah, so I don't want to sound like the old guy that's banging on the.
I am
that's banging on the young player. I believe today's amateur player, including the high school player, has never been more talented. They hit the ball farther, they throw the ball harder, they move really well. They're obviously really physically developed relative to the way players were developed 20 years ago. I mean, 25 years ago, you didn't lift weights that much when you were 14, 15, 16 years old, and these kids are super physical. So they're super talented, but there's a difference between being talented and being skilled. And so today's players never been more talented, but sometimes they lack, not all, but sometimes they lack the mental and the skill development. That there's a difference between being a prospect and being a player. And what is going to help you win a baseball game? It's awesome that at whatever showcase they put the radar gun up on the outfielder and he throws at 98 miles an hour. But it doesn't do me any good if he can't put it on the base, right? It doesn't. If he can't throw it to the base on one hop and something that somebody can handle, then that 98 doesn't play. It's a useless tool, right? And so, and then also playing for each other. You know, the showcases aren't about. And I'm not banging on showcases. Showcases are awesome because they give us a chance to see a lot of really good players in a really short amount of time at one space. But those games aren't about winning games, right? There,
right.
And so one of the strengths of our team last year, we talk about, we play for each other. You know, you're playing for the guy behind you and the guy in front of you and the guy to your right and the guy to your left. And so there's a difference between playing showcase baseball and playing what I would call winning baseball, being a winning player. And that takes some time. Base running, right? Base running counts. The ability to play good situational baseball. I can't stand the terminology pitcher only, right? That's, you know, I encourage players and parents play multiple sports as long as you can. And if you become a guy that says, you know what, I don't want to do that, well, then train as if you are, because now we have an age of pitcher. It literally just happened in the Yankee game where they can't field their position, and they can't throw to bases. They can throw at 97 to the plate, but they can't field it and throw it to the bases. And so, you know, that gets exposed in especially in college baseball. It really gets exposed. So just trying to really develop yourself as an all-around athlete and a good mover, will really set you ahead of everybody else once you get to school.
Well, Can you kind of just two more questions quickly? I know I want to keep it under 30 minutes if I can. Want to talk a little bit about, the mental portion of being a college athlete. I refer back to Tyler going from a high school senior to a college freshman, and they were playing Fresno State in a fall game, and and he gets his rear end ripped, and then his first college start is out at Palo Alto, against a stacked lineup at Stanford, and he gets his teeth kicked in. So there's a mental, as you alluded to, it's the biggest jump, regardless of the level of college, but from high school to college. Can you talk about that mental makeup that those high school younger student athletes getting into college, how long it takes to kind of be able to figure out that it's a routine, it's a daily discipline, and what it takes to mentally play, 60, 70 games if we're going into regionals and super regionals?
Yeah, I mean, we could do an hour-long show on this, and that's really what separates the great players, both in college and in professional baseball, is your ability to handle adversity, right? And it's the old equation everybody's heard: E plus R equals O. The event, which you can't control, plus the response, which you can control, is going to equal the outcome. And so, number one, knowing that this is a huge jump, right? And you aren't the first guy to go out there and not do great. But what can I control? I can control my routines. I can control my habits, right? And I'm talking about how I sleep. I'm talking about how hard I work. I'm talking about my nutrition, how coachable am I, all of those kind of things. And you just stay committed to that on a daily basis. And if you know something's going to happen to you, which it's going to, and that's the toughest thing for parents to tell a lot of parents. He's about to fail more than you've ever seen him fail before. But what I tell him is, see if I can get this right on my screen. If this is where the player currently is, and this is where he's going to be, a good coach, I'm going to coach him like the player he's going to be, not the player that he currently is. And the growth from here to here is not a straight line.
Never.
It's some good things, some bad things, some better things, not great, some good, and all of a sudden, boom, he takes off, right?
Right.
So you got to be able to handle those valleys and know that you're going through a process. And any coach worth his salt, as long as you're working hard and doing your point, is going to be right there with you and just say, listen, buddy, you just keep going, just trust. And eventually they'll become the player that they want. But it's hard because, and that's only going to continue that way as you go on throughout your career.
And into pro ball. I mean, that's the number one thing when I'm talking with parents, not so much with the student athletes, but off to the side. I try to tell them, if I could go back in time, knowing what I know now through college and college World Series and minor league and big league, you have to be prepared as a parent to understand those ebbs and flows. Those downs can be really down.
No doubt.
And you have to be able to be balanced and understand it's all part of the growth that your student athlete is going to go through.
And you really, let me add that, mental health is a very real thing. And
big.
It's super important at these especially at the younger ages. I'm talking 7, 8, 9 years old when these guys start to play. They have to understand that baseball is something that they play. It's not who they are as a person. And you have to have the ability to distinguish yourself between Tyler Beede, the baseball player, and Tyler Beede, the human being, right? The son, now husband, right? Father, I think.
Yes, he is.
Yeah. So, because if those two things start to mesh, if you start to consider yourself I'm a great guy because I pitched well, but I'm a bad guy because I pitched bad, you're not going to last, and you're going to have a lot of problems. And that's easier said than done. But I would really encourage parents. Hey man, when the game's over, it's over. Hey, did you have fun? Yes. What did you do to help your team win? Name me 2 things that you could have done better. Otherwise, let's go to Dairy Queen and it's over with. So
you're my kind of guy. Dairy Queen after a game, absolutely.
Oh yeah.
Let's
Oh,
get
yeah,
let's get a blizzard and we'll talk about something else. So
exactly.
so now let's go on to a couple of questions that I just want to finish up with. A lot of parents are looking at the game getting older, the more competitive. Do you foresee a super conference at all coming to college baseball where those power football and television rich contract conferences kind of become their own entity, for lack of a better term, and then college baseball will be like a 1AA and a super division? Do you envision that at all with regard to college baseball?
Well, I think if you held a gun to my head, I would say in some form of that, yes, because all of this is going to be built around television contracts and football. It's not going to be based on baseball, that's for sure. Um, and we'll just have to. I mean, anytime you have USC and UCLA
Going Big
playing,
Ten.
playing the same conference as Rutgers and Maryland, I'm from Maryland. That's there's a reason they're doing that. And it's not because they're going to make less money. It's only because they're going to make more money. So yeah, I do foresee that. How much is kept sacred between that level of school and maybe the next level, the Wichita State, the Cal State Fullerton, the traditional baseball powers that aren't playing football. I don't know. All I know is this: that the rich are going to get richer, and if you're not playing high level college football, you're just that doesn't mean you can't be good in baseball. Baseball is the ultimate equalizer is the guy that stands on the mound, right? So that doesn't mean you still can't be good. It's just the resources are going to be so drastically different. I'd like to think that we will still play for the same College World Series, but if you said, hey, in 20 years or 15 years, there was an additional College World Series of some level. I mean, I can see that happening, but I don't think it's going to be as doomsday as most people think. But I do believe we'll see some movement here in the next 4 to 5 years.
And the last question everybody's asking: if you are someone from North Dakota or Boston, Massachusetts, and you aspire to be an Aggie and you want to get in front of Coach Schlossnagle and the entire staff at A&M, do they write you an email? Do they include a video? Do they follow you on Twitter? What's the best way to wave out to Coach Schloss and say, hey, look at me, I'd love to be an Aggie someday?
Yeah, I would say every single email that I get that we get that is directly addressed to us, right? If it says "Dear Coach," I don't even open it. If it says "Dear Coach Schlossnagle" or "Dear Coach Yeski," our pitching coach, and I'm so and so, and here's a link to a YouTube video, we look at every single one of those, right? And I've signed a lot of players that the initial attraction was off of video, and now Twitter definitely plays a role in that. All of the other social media things, but understand that just starts a conversation. We also have seen plenty of, hey, there's 2 great pitches, and nobody videoed the other 40 that he didn't throw a strike. So sometimes that happens too. But I would really encourage not just the parent and player reaching out. I would encourage a coach. A lot of these coaches that these guys play for, we have long-standing relationships with because that we've dealt with them for many, many years. And then going back to the camp, if you're a guy who is really interested in Texas A&M or you're really interested in UCLA, then go to that camp, and that's the best opportunity for them to get to know you and for you to get to know them.
Well, Jim, I want to say thank you again for being so generous with your time. I won't keep you any longer. I really want to say again, I've said it before, I'm going to probably continue to say it. Very blessed that you were able to spend that time, you and your son were able to spend those weeks, almost a month and a half with Tyler. Definitely altered his future. I know he thinks tremendously highly of you, to the point where he's got an A&M baby suit on Bo Diesel. I think he might be a lefty, so I think I'm going to have
awesome.
to either he's going to be a pitcher or a lumberjack of a hitter. But he does say to say hello. I appreciate your time. I follow you all the time, all season, and I'm sure we'll catch up at one of these SEC tournaments at some point that I'll be stopping by. And for everybody out there, if you get a chance, you're in the area, you want to go see a game, SEC baseball, especially A&M 12th man, just go there when the count's 3-0, and they're brutal on pitching. But it's a tremendous college baseball environment, having been there with Tyler many years ago. So, Jim, thank you very much for joining us, and I'm sure many people will be sending you an email after this. I appreciate your time, and we'll connect sometime in the near future, maybe at the ABCA.
Yes, sir. Thanks so much for having me. And
all right. Thank you, Jim.
Yeah, I love what you're doing.
Thank you, sir. So I want to say thank you to everybody that joined us here this evening. We had a wonderful discussion with Coach Jim Schlossnagle at Texas A&M. If you like our videos on Thursday evenings, our live streams, please do me a favor, hit like. If it do nothing else, just hit the like button on the video. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Send me your questions and comments. Next Thursday, we're going to have 7-time national champion LSU Eunice coach Jeff Willis will be joining us. Future guests will be Eric Bakich at Clemson University, Mike Baxter at Vanderbilt, John Casey at, let's see, where is he now? He's at, not Roger Williams, he's at, he was at Tufts for over 40 years, and I'm going to get shot for not remembering. But we're going to have a whole litany of coaches joining us through the month of November and December into the holiday season. Thank you for joining us tonight, and we look forward to next Thursday night with Coach Willis. Thank you and good night.